The security man told me to get my hands off Ava Langley's car before he called the police, and I remember the dashboard clock on my tow truck glowing 5:42 p.m., which meant I was 18 minutes from losing my last Langley Ridge contract and being late again for my daughter Nora at after-school care. Ava, 16 and shivering in a soaked wool coat, watched him talk to me like I was stealing instead of helping, while a black Rolls-Royce Ghost sat 40 yards behind her with its tinted windows shut tight against the rain. Then my green tire pressure gauge, the cheap one with Nora's peeling robin sticker on the side, clicked against the valve stem, and I saw the cut. Not a rip, not a nail puncture. A clean little crescent, too neat for the road and too hidden for a scared kid to notice. I stopped with my hand still on the wheel, because a flat tire can ruin a night, but that kind of mark could ruin a girl's life, a man's job, and the one thin line I still had between being poor and being treated like I deserved it. Before I tell you why that tiny cut finally made Victoria Langley step out of a Rolls-Royce, do me one favor. If you have ever done the decent thing and still had someone look at you like you were the problem, hit subscribe, because this story is for the people who keep their hands steady when the world mistakes kindness for weakness. My name is Owen Hartley. I was 39 years old then, a roadside mechanic with one aging tow truck, a rented two-bay shop behind a closed laundromat, and a 7-year-old daughter who believed I could fix anything because she had not yet learned how many things in this world are built to stay broken. I had no business being outside the Langley estate that evening, except that a disabled vehicle call had come through near the stone gates, and I was the only truck close enough to take it before the shoulder turned to mud. The rain smelled like hot rubber and wet leaves. Passing cars hissed over the asphalt. Ava kept rubbing one thumb against the sleeve of her coat, not like a spoiled rich girl, but like a child trying to disappear inside something expensive enough to protect her, and failing anyway. I did not know her last name when I pulled over. I did not know her mother owned half the county. I only saw a teenager standing too close to traffic with a flat tire, shaking hands, and nobody beside her. So I put my jacket over her shoulders, set the warning triangle behind the car, and told her to stand on the grass side of the guardrail. That was when the security SUV came fast around the bend, lights flashing blue-white across the wet pavement. And Marcus Vale stepped out in a tailored overcoat with the kind of calm men use when they expect the world to obey them. "Step away from Miss Langley's vehicle," he said. "Not please. Not thank you. Just an order." Ava whispered. He fixed it. He didn't ask me for anything. Marcus looked at my truck, then at the grease under my fingernails, and I felt that old familiar weighing happen. I tightened the last lug nut anyway. "Slow. Brupe. Safe. I'll leave when the wheel won't come loose at 50 miles an hour," I said. "That's not attitude. That's torque." Ava almost smiled. Then the Rolls-Royce gave a soft electronic chirp. The rear door unlocked, and before the woman inside stepped onto the wet road, Ava said something so quiet it cut deeper than Marcus ever could. Mom watched the whole time, to understand why I did not step back when Marcus Vale spoke to me like that. You have to know what my mornings looked like before any Rolls-Royce ever parked behind me in the rain. They started at 5:16 a.m. in a second-floor apartment above a bakery that threw away better food than Nora and I bought most weeks, with the radiators knocking like old pipes arguing in the walls and my daughter coughing twice before she opened her eyes. I always counted the coughs. 2 meant the air was dry. 4 meant the inhaler needed to be in her backpack pocket, not the kitchen drawer, not the glove box, not somewhere a tired father could forget it. That morning, she sat at our small table in her purple school sweatshirt, drawing robins on the corner of my invoices while I packed her lunch for what we had left. Half a turkey sandwich, apple slices browned at the edges, and the last yogurt cup, the strawberry one she pretended not to know I liked too. "You take it, Dad," she said, pushing it toward me with that serious little face children get when they have learned too early how money sounds in a room. I slid it back in her lunch bag and zipped it before she could argue. "Mechanics run on coffee and bad decisions," I told her. 7-year-olds run on yogurt." She gave me the look her mother used to give me, the one that said she knew I was lying and loved me enough not to make me admit it. My shop sat behind a laundromat that had been closed since March, 2 bays, 1 lift that stuck in cold weather, a compressor that rattled like loose teeth, and a front office barely big enough for a desk, a parts shelf, and Nora's emergency coloring box. The place always smelled like rubber dust, brake cleaner, old coffee, and rainwater trapped in floor mats. I kept three things in the top drawer: unpaid bills clipped by due date, a spare inhaler, and the green tire pressure gauge Nora had decorated with a robin sticker because she said every tool needed a bird so it could find its way home. It was a cheap gauge, $12 at a parts store off Route 9, but I trusted it more than the digital ones because it never tried to be smarter than the job. That was my rule with cars and with people too. Read what is actually in front of you. Do not invent noise. Do not ignore pressure. By noon, I had patched a landscaper's trailer tire for 40 cash, jumped a nurse's dead battery outside urgent care, and told her to pay me Friday because she looked like she had already been carrying too much, and turned down a dealership overflow job that would have paid better because pickup was at 5:30 and Nora had to be collected by 6. People think poverty makes you chase every dollar. Sometimes it makes you choose which consequence you can live with. At 4:57, I was wiping bead sealant off my hands when my phone buzzed with a private dispatch from the Langley Ridge roadside account, the one contract I could not afford to lose. Disabled vehicle. Teen driver. Near South Stonegate. Client request discretion. No police unless necessary. The fee was good enough to cover Nora's inhaler refill and the overdue electric notice sitting under my coffee mug. The timing was bad enough to cost me both. I looked at the clock, then at Nora's robin sticker on that old green gauge, and I heard my daughter's voice in my head from the week before, when she had seen me stop for a stranded stranger in a grocery store parking lot. "You help first," she had said. "Then you worry." So I took the call, locked the shop, and drove toward Langley Ridge with the rain coming down harder every mile. I did not know Ava Langley was standing alone beside traffic. I did not know her mother was already watching from behind tinted glass. I only knew the dispatch note had changed while I was 5 minutes out, adding one line that made my hand tighten on the wheel: security advised to observe before approaching. The line on the dispatch note stayed with me the whole drive up the ridge: security advised to observe before approaching. I had done enough roadside work for gated communities to know what that meant. It meant somebody important wanted help close enough to be useful and far enough away to blame. It meant the person in trouble was not really alone, just watched. And that, somehow, made it worse. Rain came down in hard silver lines over the windshield, and my tow truck climbed past mailbox numbers carved into stone walls, past hedges trimmed straighter than courthouse benches, past driveways so long they disappeared into trees before you ever saw a house. My wipers squeaked every third pass. The heater smelled faintly of coolant. In the passenger seat, Nora's green tire pressure gauge rolled against the lip of the console each time I took a turn, that little robin sticker flashing up at me like a reminder I had no right to be reckless and no right to be cruel. At 5:31, my phone buzzed again from the after-school desk. Just a reminder, pickup closes at 6 o'clock. Late fee applies after 6:05. I did not answer. I could not answer and drive those wet curves at the same time, and I knew if I heard the tired edge and Mrs. Keene's voice, I might turn around before I reached the call. Then I saw her. Not the Rolls-Royce first. Not the stone gate or the black security cameras tucked under the lanterns. I saw a girl standing too close to the road with one hand wrapped around her own wrist, like she was holding herself in place. Her hazard lights blinked orange across the rain. The front passenger tire sagged low against the asphalt. She had a phone in her hand, but she was not looking at it. She was looking toward the curve behind her, toward the dark shape of a car parked back under the trees. A black Rolls-Royce Ghost. Engine running. Windows dark. Waiting. Ava Langley did not look like trouble when I pulled onto the shoulder behind her. She looked like a kid who had spent all her courage getting somewhere and had none left for the part where the world answered back. "You the roadside guy?" she asked, trying to sound older than 16. "When the truck starts on the first try, yes," I said, and pointed gently toward the guardrail. "Stand on the grass side for me. Road doesn't care who your mother is." Her eyes flicked to mine at that, quick and startled, and for 1 second I thought I'd said the wrong thing. Then she moved. No argument. No rich girl performance. Just a scared kid obeying the one adult who sounded more worried about traffic than permission. I set out the warning triangle, pulled my jacket off, and put it around her shoulders before I touched the car. She opened her mouth like she wanted to refuse it, then closed it and held the collar with both hands. The wheel was expensive, spotless, the kind dealerships polish even where no one looks. But the tire had gone down too cleanly for the rain and the distance. No stridi no nail head showing, no scrape along the rim from hitting the curb. Just a slow, deliberate collapse. I crouched there in my work shirt with rain running down the back of my neck, aware of the Rolls-Royce behind us, aware of the minute hand moving somewhere inside my truck, aware of my daughter waiting under fluorescent lights with her backpack in her lap. "Can you fix it?" Ava asked. I looked at the spare well, then at the valve cap lying near the white line where it had no reason to be. "I can get you safe," I said. "That's the job." The words had barely left my mouth when blue-white lights washed over the wet pavement, and a black security SUV came around the bend too fast. Ava's fingers tightened around my jacket. The driver's door opened. Marcus Vale stepped out smiling like he had already decided what kind of man I was, and the Rolls-Royce behind him unlocked with one soft, expensive chirp. Marcus Vale did not raise his voice. Men like him rarely do. He let the rain and the flashing lights do the loud part, then looked at my tow truck and my work shirt dark with water, at the orange warning triangle I'd set out on the shoulder, and finally at the jacket wrapped around Ava's shoulders, as if even that small kindness had crossed some private property line. "Miss Langley," he said, speaking to her while staring at me, "please step away for the contractor." Contractor, not mechanic, not the man helping you. Just a word clean enough to make me disposable. Ava did not move. She held my jacket tighter at the collar, and that, more than anything Marcus said, made the air change. The rear door of the Rolls-Royce opened then, and Victoria Langley stepped out beneath a black umbrella a driver had somehow gotten over her before the rain touched her coat. Cream wool, pearl earrings, face calm enough to make panic look like something other people did. She was beautiful, yes, but in that expensive, guarded way that made you notice the distance before you noticed the woman. Her eyes went to Ava first, then to the tire, then to me. They paused on my hands. Grease in the cuticles. A crescent scar across one knuckle. The green tire pressure gauge half hidden in my palm with Nora's Crooked Robin sticker peeling at the wing. Marcus noticed it too and gave a small laugh through his nose. "Are we relying on novelty tools now?" he asked. One of the security men smiled. "Not much. Just enough. I have been laughed at by men in nicer coats than mine before, but Ava heard it, and I watched her face close like a door." Victoria did not laugh. She also did not stop him. That was the part one remembered later. The silence of powerful people can do almost as much damage as their words. "Mr. Hartley," Marcus said, reading my name off his phone like it tasted cheap, "your service will be compensated. Leave the vehicle as it is, and someone from our approved provider list will handle it." I looked down at the wheel. Two lug nuts were still only finger tight because I had paused when he arrived. The car sat on a slight grade. Vet bafement. Teen driver. Traffic coming blind around the bend. "No," I said. One word. Ava looked at me like she had not expected a poor man to say it in front of that much money. Marcus's smile thinned. "Excuse me?" I said no. I picked up the torque wrench from the mat beside my knee. "You can write me up, cancel the account, call the police, whatever helps everybody feel official. But that doesn't leave this shoulder loose." The rain went quiet around us for one strange second, or maybe I just stopped hearing it. Victoria's eyes narrowed, not angry exactly. Measuring. Marcus stepped closer, blocking me from the Rolls-Royce with his body. "You are on private approach road under Langley security jurisdiction." He said it like a courthouse stamp. "And you are touching a minor's vehicle after being instructed to stop." There it was. The soft threat. Not a punch. Not a shout. Something cleaner. Something that could take a man's license, his contract, his custody schedule, his whole thin little life, and make it look like paperwork. I thought of Nora sitting under fluorescent lights with her backpack in her lap. I thought of the yogurt I had put in her lunch instead of mine. Then I tightened the first lug nut until the wrench clicked. "My daughter rides on roads like this," I said. "So does yours." Victoria's face changed so slightly most people would have missed it. Ava did not. She took one small step toward me, still wrapped in my wet jacket, and whispered, "Mom, he's making it safe." Marcus turned his head toward her, And as he did, the keys in his right hand swung once under the security light. For half a second, between the black fob and the silver house key, I saw a tiny brass valve core tool hanging there like it belonged to nobody important. Then he closed his fist around it. I did not look at Marcus's hand for long. That is one of the first things you learn working roadside calls around angry people and expensive property. Never stare at the thing that matters until you know whether the person holding it understands what you saw. So I let my eyes drop back to the wheel, let the torque wrench click once more, and kept my voice even. Rain ran from my hair into my collar. My knees ached from crouching on the shoulder. Nora's green gauge sat on the wet mat beside the spare like a child's toy someone had dropped in the wrong world. That little Robin sticker staring up at all of us while men with earpieces decided whether I was a threat. Ava noticed me notice it. Not the tool in Marcus's fist, not exactly. Kids see the shape of silence better than adults do. She looked from my face to the tire, then down at the valve cap lying near the white line, and her mouth opened just a little. That was on tight before, she said. Marcus turned toward her too quickly. Ava, you don't need to participate in this. Participate. Like the flat belonged to a meeting and not to the girl who had been standing beside traffic in the rain. Victoria's umbrella tilted a fraction. Her eyes moved to the valve cap, then to me. What is she talking about? She asked. I wiped my thumb across the valve stem, slow enough that everybody could see I was not grabbing or hiding anything. There was a thin slice at the base, nearly invisible under the water, the kind of mark that would not mean much to anyone who only thought tires failed in big, dramatic ways. Blowouts, nails, broken glass. But slow leaks have manners. They whisper before they confess. I took Nora's gauge and pressed it gently to the stem. The needle jumped, shivered, dropped. Not enough to make a speech out of. Enough to make my stomach go cold. Marcus gave a short laugh. You're diagnosing sabotage with a sticker gauge now. One security man smiled again, but Victoria did not. Ava's fingers tightened around my jacket. I set the gauge down carefully, like it deserved better than his joke. I'm not diagnosing anything, I said. I'm saying the pressure lost doesn't match the tire, the rim, or the road. That sounds like diagnosing. No, I said, and looked at Victoria for the first time instead of Marcus. That sounds like checking before a scared kid drives away. The rain clicked against the umbrella. Somewhere beyond the gate, a dog barked once and went quiet. Victoria's face stayed guarded, but something behind it shifted. Not trust, not apology, just the smallest crack in the certainty she had brought with her. Marcus stepped between us before it could become anything useful. Mrs. Langley, this is exactly why we use approved providers. He is improvising on the shoulder, involving Ava, and now implying criminal conduct without basis. He said it smoothly, almost gently, and that made it more dangerous. Men who shout tell you where the blade is. Men like Marcus wrap it in policy. I picked up the valve cap with 2 fingers and held it out on my palm. There was a faint brass shaving caught inside the threads, bright as a grain of sand. Not proof. Not enough. But wrong. Ava saw it before her mother did. That wasn't there when I checked my tires at school, she whispered. Marcus's face changed for less than a second. So fast you could have missed it if you had not spent your life watching people decide whether to lie. Victoria saw that too. This time, when Marcus reached for the valve cap, she lifted one hand and stopped him without touching him. No, she said quietly. Then she looked at me, still like I might be trouble, but no longer like she was sure what kind. Mr. Hartley, how much time do you need to tell me whether my daughter was safe to drive this car? I thought of Nora waiting under fluorescent lights. I thought of the late fee. I thought of the way Ava had said Mom watched the whole time. 10 minutes, I said. Marcus smiled like 10 minutes could ruin him. And that was when Victoria turned toward the gatehouse and said, pull the south camera footage. The gatehouse smelled like wet wool, warm electronics, and the kind of coffee that had been sitting on a burner since noon. Victoria had us come inside because the rain was getting heavier, but nobody said the word shelter. People like the Langleys did not invite men like me in from the weather. They relocated a problem to a room with cameras. A security monitor covered one wall. 9 black and white views of stone gates, empty drives, clipped hedges, and a private road where Ava's car sat under flashing hazards. I stood near the door with my cap in my hand because every chair in that room looked like it belonged to somebody on payroll. Ava stayed beside the desk, still wearing my jacket, her hair dripping onto the marble threshold. Marcus stood behind Victoria's shoulder, close enough to advise and far enough to deny. "South camera," Victoria said. Her voice was quiet, but the guard at the console moved like she had shouted. The footage rolled back in a jerky gray stream. There was Ava's car, headlights cutting through rain. There was the Rolls-Royce waiting under the trees. There was my truck not yet in the frame. Then, for 47 seconds, the picture stuttered, blurred, and shifted to a view of wet hedges, as if the camera had been bumped or manually jogged. When it came back, Ava's car had rolled 3 yards farther down the shoulder, and the front passenger tire was already sagging. Nobody spoke. That kind of silence has weight. It presses on the cheapest man in the room first, because everybody expects him to fill it with apology. I did not. I took Nora's green gauge from my pocket and set it gently on the desk beside the valve cap, not as evidence exactly, but as a reminder to myself. Check pressure. Don't invent it. That gap doesn't prove anything, Marcus said, and he was right in the narrowest, most convenient way. Rain interferes with exterior cameras all the time. Rain doesn't turn a lens toward hedges, I said. He looked at me then, all the polish gone from his eyes for one clean second. "Careful, Mr. Hartley. You're already late for a child pickup, aren't you? Dispatch has your file. Single parent. Independent contractor. Thin margin." Ava flinched before I did. Victoria saw it. That mattered more than if she had seen me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I knew without checking that it was the after-school desk again. Nora waiting. Fluorescent lights. Backpack in her lap. A father's promise thinning by the minute. Marcus had not raised his voice, but he had reached past my wallet and put a finger on my daughter's name. I could have stepped back then. A sensible man might have. Instead, I looked at Victoria, not begging, not accusing. "I don't need to win an argument," I said. "I need your daughter's tire checked before somebody decides the story for her." Ava moved closer to the desk and placed one small wet hand beside the gauge, like she was guarding it. "Mom," she said. He knew before the camera. Victoria stared at the frozen monitor, then at Marcus, then at the cheap green tool on her polished desk. The change in her face was tiny, but I saw it. A woman who had built her life around control had just realized control could be aimed at her too. Marcus reached for the keyboard. Victoria's hand came down first. "No edits," she said. "No summaries. Open the full file in the house." Then she looked toward the long drive beyond the rain-dark window, where warm lights had begun to glow in the main estate. "If we're going to question Mr. Hartley's judgment," she said, "we can do it where everyone can hear his answer." The main house did not feel like a home from the part of it they brought me into. It felt like a place designed to make ordinary people lower their voices. Marble floors, tall windows black with rain, a long walnut table set for some kind of foundation reception, with silver water pitchers, folded place cards, and a dozen people in dark suits who had clearly been interrupted from the business of being important. I stood near the end of that table in my wet work shirt, holding my cap with both hands, while Ava stayed a step closer to me than anyone else in the room. Victoria had the full camera file sent to the wall screen. No summaries. No edits. Marcus stood beside the fireplace with his arms folded, his face calm again, but I saw his thumb working against the side of his index finger, rubbing where the brass valve tool had been. The footage started before Ava came around the bend. We watched rain stripe across the lens, watched her car slow near the south gate, watched the Rolls-Royce waiting beneath the trees like a secret with headlights. Then the camera shifted. Not a full blackout. Not enough to be dramatic. Just a small mechanical twitch, a jog to the right, hedges filling the frame for 47 seconds while the room breathed and pretended not to. When the road came back, the tire had begun to sag. "That still proves nothing," Marcus said. He said too fast. One of the men near the table nodded because men in suits often nod before they understand. I set Nora's green gauge on the polished walnut. It looked ridiculous there, cheap plastic beside crystal glasses and embossed folders, but Ava's eyes went straight to it like it was the only honest thing in the room. "You're right," I said. "That footage alone doesn't prove who touched the tire. Marcus almost smiled, but it proves when the pressure changed. The room quieted. I pointed to the screen, not touching anything. Her hazard lights blink at a steady rate. You can use that as a clock. Before the camera moves, the tire wall is still carrying weight. After the 47 seconds, the sidewall starts folding. A nail on the road doesn't wait for the camera to look away. Nobody laughed then. I picked up the valve cap with the brass shaving caught in its threads and placed it beside the gauge. And a loose valve cap doesn't leave this kind of shaving unless somebody turns metal against metal in a hurry. Victoria looked from the cap to Marcus. Not accusation. Not yet. Something worse for him. Doubt. Marcus stepped forward. Mrs. Langley, this is theater. He is a roadside contractor trying to turn a service call into leverage. Ava's voice broke the room before mine could. He gave me his jacket before he knew my name. It was such a small sentence. It stopped everyone harder than evidence did. Victoria closed her eyes for half a second, and when she opened them, she looked at her daughter like she had heard the child instead of the problem for the first time that night. I did not enjoy Marcus shrinking under that silence. I need you to understand that. A man can be wronged and still not want to become the kind of person who enjoys watching another man bleed socially. I'm not here to ruin anybody, I said. I'm here because your daughter was about to drive a car that wasn't safe. Marcus's face changed. The polish cracked. Then take your fee and leave. He pulled a checkbook from inside his coat and wrote with a hand that was steadier than his eyes. $5,000 for your trouble. 10 if you sign a statement that you found no evidence of tampering. The room shifted around that number. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Nora, late pickup, late fee, maybe the school calling again. Victoria watched me look down at it, and Marcus saw her watching. He tore the check free, laid it beside Nora's gauge, and said softly enough that only the first half of the table could hear, or keep playing hero and explain to your daughter why doing the right thing costs more than you can afford. The check lay beside Nora's green gauge like a dare. $10,000. Enough to refill the inhaler, pay the electric bill, cover the late pickup fees, replace the rear tires on my truck, and let me sleep one night without doing math against the ceiling. I wish I could tell you I did not want it. That would be a cleaner story. It would also be a lie. Poverty does not make you noble. It makes every easy exit look like mercy. My phone buzzed again, harder this time against my thigh, and I saw Mrs. Keene's name on the screen before I turned it face down. Nora was waiting. Marcus knew it. That was why he smiled. You can still be the good guy at home, he said quietly. Sign the statement, take the money, pick up your daughter, and let Mrs. Langley's people handle Mrs. Langley's daughter. The room did not move. Even the rain against the windows seemed to soften, so it could hear what a poor man would cost. Ava stared at the check, then at me. She had my jacket around her shoulders and one hand resting near the gauge, not touching it, just close like children stand near a night light when they are too old to admit they are scared. Victoria watched from the head of the table, guarded still, but no longer distant. There was guilt in her face now, small and unwelcome, the kind a powerful woman tries to hide because if it gets seen, people start asking what else she has missed. Marcus opened a leather folder and slid a printed statement across the walnut. It was already prepared. That was the part that made my chest go cold. Found no indication of third-party interference. Recommended approved provider inspection. Roadside contractor released vehicle in stable condition. My name was typed at the bottom, waiting for my hand. Not evidence from nowhere. Something worse. A story built before the truth had finished speaking. You had that ready, Ava whispered. Marcus did not look at her. I prepare for outcomes. No, I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. I picked up the check, folded it once, and set it back down without tearing it, because drama is cheap and paper still belonged to somebody. Then I picked up Nora's gauge. The robin sticker had lifted at the edge from the rain, and I pressed it flat with my thumb the way I did when Nora brought home drawings with corners bent in her backpack. My daughter thinks this tool has to find its way home, I said. So do I. Marcus's smile disappeared. Careful. Refusing compensation will not protect you from a complaint. You touched a minor's car after being told to stop. You involved Ava in a security matter. You were late picking up your own child. People can make that sound very ugly. He was right. That was the poison in it. A lie does not need to be big if it knows where you are tired. For 1 second, I saw the path he offered me. Sign leave, keep my contract, keep Nora from waiting, let Ava go back into that house where every fear had a badge and every locked door called itself protection. Then Ava asked, if he signs, does that mean I imagined it? The whole room stopped. That was the question no money could answer. I looked at Victoria then, not Marcus. Truth is not something you buy from the man with the smallest bank account, I said. And a child is not safer because adults agree to call fear a procedure. Victoria lowered her eyes to the statement. Her hand tightened once on the edge of the table. Marcus stepped toward the folder, but she closed it before he reached it. Not forgiveness. Not justice. Not yet. Just a woman choosing, for the first time that night, not to let him choose for her. I turned my phone over. 3 missed calls. 1 message from Mrs. Keene. Nora is okay, but she's asking if you forgot. That one hurt worse than Marcus ever could. I handed the gauge to Ava. Hold this for me, I said. I need both hands to leave clean. Then I walked toward the door with the check still on the table, not knowing whether I had just saved a stranger's daughter or lost the only life mine had. I had my hand on a brass door handle when Victoria said my name. Not Owen. Not roadside contractor. Mr. Hartley. Quietly, but the room heard it. I turned because Ava still had Nora's green gauge in both hands, and because leaving clean did not mean leaving a child alone with a lie. Victoria was standing at the head of that long table with Marcus's prepared statement closed beneath her palm. For the first time all night, she did not look like a woman managing a problem. She looked like a mother realizing she had mistaken control for safety until control had learned to speak in her voice. No one is signing that, she said. Marcus started to answer, but she lifted one finger, and every person who had laughed at my gauge or my truck or my wet work shirt suddenly remembered who owned the house they were standing in. The full security log came up 10 minutes later, not because I demanded it, but because Ava whispered, "Please, Mom," and Victoria finally listened to the child before the policy. It did not show Marcus cutting the valve stem like some cheap movie confession. Real life is rarely that generous. It showed his badge opening the Southgate service panel at 5:19, the same manual override that jogged the camera toward the hedges for 47 seconds. It showed the incident statement had been created 12 minutes before dispatch ever sent me the call. It showed enough. The room went so still I could hear rainwater dripping from my sleeve onto the marble. Marcus did not explode. Men like him do not give you that satisfaction. He only went pale around the mouth while Victoria's legal people took his badge, his phone, and the folder he had used like a weapon. "You will not speak to my daughter again without counsel present," Victoria told him. That was his punishment beginning, not mine to finish. I did not smile. Ava was watching. So was the memory of Nora. Victoria turned to me then, and what she did next mattered more than any check. She picked up my phone herself, called Mrs. Keene, and said, in a voice that shook only once, "Please tell Nora Hartley her father did not forget her. He was making sure my daughter got home alive." Then she paid the late fee directly to the school, not as a reward, not as a favor, but as the cost of the time her house had taken for my child. I let her do that. I would not take $10,000 for a lie. I could accept $12.50 worth of truth. Ava walked over and handed me the green gauge. The robin sticker had been pressed flat again with a strip of clear tape, crooked but careful. "I fixed the wing," she said. It was the first time her voice sounded 16 instead of cornered. "You made it safe," I told her. She looked at her mother. "Can we go home without 3 cars following us?" Victoria swallowed, and the answer cost her more than money. "1 car," she said. "Behind us, not around us. And you drive." Ava smiled then, small and stunned, like somebody had opened a window in a locked room. 2 weeks later, Victoria came to my shop without cameras, without Marcus, without a check big enough to insult me. She brought Ava's repaired tire, the full report for the authorities, and an apology she did not try to decorate. "I saw a man helping my child," she said, standing on my cracked concrete floor between the compressor and the coffee maker, "and I let my world treat him like a threat. I am sorry." I nodded because some apologies deserve to land without being made easy. Nora was sitting at my desk, coloring another robin on an invoice, and Ava crouched beside her like marble floors and walnut tables had never existed. I kept the Langley account only after Victoria agreed every roadside provider would be paid fairly, spoken to by name, and never again asked to trade truth for access. I did not become rich that night. I did not marry the billionaire. I went back to fixing tires, checking pressure, packing lunches, counting coughs. But sometimes when Nora puts that green gauge in my hand, I still see Ava standing in the rain and Victoria finally stepping out from behind tinted glass. And I remember that dignity is not when the powerful reward you. It is when they're forced, at last, to see you clearly.